Hello, welcome to the crazy world of Gerry Hunt. I'm Gerry and this is my music den here. It's full of instruments, much too many instruments for my own personal health, but never mind. And this is just a little quick tour around some of the instruments that I try to make noises on, and just to give you a little potted history of how I came to this crazy place of multi-instrumentalism, because that's what I am. I play a bit of this and a bit of that, and I make noises on a few things. So while I put my baritone saxophone down, I've been a member of Grand Union now for about, well, 35 years, possibly a little bit more. And that has been such an important part of my life, and in fact has helped me learn so many different things about music, about the world, about people. But I'll come back to that later, because I'd like to go right back to how I got into this crazy place. This is my studio, by the way, and I'll just give you a quick run around. There's some of the instruments that I'm going to try and demonstrate a little bit today, and it's a drum kit that I don't really play, but my friends do. So it all started at school, not primary school, but secondary school, very late. I wasn't a musician, didn't sing, and when I say I wasn't a musician, I wasn't doing any studies in music or anything, but I knew I really liked it, and we all did recorder lessons. The recorder! And it wasn't taught very well, but I got the bug, and so I started teaching myself, and of course, you know, started off with the normal learned a few more notes. So that really got me going on learning music, and indeed, I taught myself to read music, very useful skill. About that time my brother was taking guitar lessons, and he didn't take to it. So he gave up, and I got his books, and the guitar was really a cool instrument, is a cool instrument. So I started teaching myself basically a classical style. My classical guitar, Spanish guitar, and I learned to play a few notes, even some nice little also got really good at making mistakes. But that's another thing I learnt. We make mistakes, we learn from them, and sometimes we really like our mistakes. So there I was on my musical journey, playing guitar. A friend of mine came along and taught me bar chords, a big revelation in life, how to find loads of other chords. And so began the journey on the guitar, which I'm continuing on today. It's still the hardest instrument that I try to play, but I love it. But I had this insatiable appetite for having a go at other instruments. Our music department was full of very old instruments. It was a grammar school. They had some instruments that hadn't been touched for ages, and I remember one summer 3 friends of mine and I, we went into the music department and we just got all these instruments and had a go. And it's fantastic. Loved it. Trumpets, trombones, and a friend of mine at that time was playing the viola, and he was the only viola player in the school orchestra. So I thought, okay, not many people playing viola, so I borrowed one. And again, I taught myself, not very well, but I just used what I'd learnt on the recorder and the guitar, notes. Obviously lots of different techniques, but what I very soon found was that what I played on the guitar, I can use the similar sort of techniques. Now obviously the bow is very hard. I don't practice this very much. You'll soon hear. When I started, of course, it was all the normal. Not playing very. Oh dear. Oh, lots of squeaks and lots of horrible noises. But eventually. Gradually started being able to play a little bit more in tune. One very joyous thing I discovered was just messing around with notes and just making my own little tunes up. Improvisation, very simple improvisation. Take a note, take another note, put them together. What can I do out of it? And this is just an inspiration to me, and I just got going on that, and that stayed with me for the rest of my life. In fact, I've been winging it ever since, making stuff up on the spot and finding lots of little things on the different instruments that I play. However, the viola, the classical guitar, I began hearing other sorts of music. And one big thing that came into my life was a group called the Shadows. Hank Marvin, he became my hero. And the Shadows, they were backing Cliff Richard, but they soon became famous in their own right because they played instrumental music, just tunes. It was fantastic. and I'm sure there was a bit of improvisation in it, but it was mainly nice tunes, foot tapper, things like this, and probably the most famous one was Apache. And Hank, he got one of the first Fender Stratocasters in the country. I think Cliff Richard bought it for him. This is a Fender Stratocaster, and it is a classic guitar. And of course, I always wanted one. Many years later, I eventually got one. Not quite the same as Hank's. This one's a coffee coloured, I suppose you call it, and his was red. But it's just a classic sound. And actually that got sampled quite a lot later on by some rap artists and things like this. Anyway, the electric guitar, suddenly this wild beast was in my hand and I couldn't control it very well. But I knew I loved the sound of it, and the Shadows were a fantastic influence on me. The whammy bar, I always wanted one of them, got one. But I didn't stay just with the Shadows. There are loads of other influences came in. Of course, rock and roll. The Beatles. Maybe before that was Chuck Berry. All right. Told you I'd make lots of mistakes. Beatles. Etc. Mistakes and all. So the wonderful idea of the riff, that's a classic one. Day Tripper, of course, and things started getting a little bit heavier. And there's a group called Deep Purple, and this is a tune that if you go into a music shop you'll get thrown out. But I still love it. Smoke on the Water. But then one day my brother brought home this amazing record, Jimi Hendrix, and that just blew my mind. So he really revolutionized the whole era of guitar. How can I do that? But anyway, he had a tune called Purple Haze, which was a huge hit. Oh. Okay. So the guitar became a big part of my life, and I really wanted to play with the group, and I sort of did, but not until I went to university. I really did not know what I wanted to do in life. I played guitar a bit, and scraped away on the viola, and that sort of thing, but as for being a musician, well, you know, I knew all these friends of mine who played really well, could read any music, was studying scores by Bach and things like that. Well, that wasn't part of my life. It was much more rock and roll and the blues and things like this. And I went to university to do biology, and there was this band with two guitarists, drummer. I couldn't be the guitarist in it, so I became the bass player, and I loved it. That's still one of my favourite parts to play in a band. And I've kept playing the bass. Not quite as big as this one. This one is a 6-string version. And so I played in this band at university, and I played with a pick in those days, but I started looking at bass players and they would play with their fingers, much more like using what you would do on a classical guitar. Technology always lets you down a bit. Alright, so I started playing bass, and I thought the bass player always played, well, that just plays. Very simple lines, very simple lines. That's when I started encountering jazz, and I'd listened to some jazz records before and even tried playing along with them, but I didn't really know what I was doing, and mostly it was not very good. It was pretty nonsensical what I played. It didn't work out with the tunes. I was listening to Charlie Parker and all those bebop people, and I thought, I'll never be able to play jazz. These guys are just magicians as well as musicians. They know something I don't. I'll never know. Their brains work in certain ways that mine don't. Mine doesn't. So I would still have a go, and there I was in the rock band. I joined this jazz group, and I did not know what I was doing, really. I knew, yeah, a few chords. I even knew a few little arpeggios. A few little scales. The C scale. Oh yeah, the good old C scale. And then one day a friend of mine lent me Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, the biggest selling album of all time, and suddenly my C scale sounded cool. That's odd. I'm playing C, but it didn't sound like C. In fact, I found out the bass player was playing So What? Classic track. And I found that the bass player was playing the C scale and walking around it, but it wasn't, the main note wasn't C, it was D. Years later I found that it was called the Dorian mode, and this was a revelation to me, and suddenly I could play along with Miles Davis for 16 bars, and then it changed. I didn't know what it did then, and then it went back to this D minor scale. So that opened up loads of things for me, and the modes and all those sorts of things became central to my thinking. I did a jazz gig, and I really, as I said, didn't know what I was doing other than, oh, the Dorian mode, because it doesn't fit everything. And on that gig I had to play tunes I'd never played before. Oh dear, in front of an audience. So I found a wonderful way of bluffing my way through it. The chromatic scale. And whatever jazz tune we would do, oh, it's in E flat. Okay, E flat I knew would be a good note sometimes. So I would literally and sometimes the notes would sound really good, and sometimes they wouldn't. So I would just adjust to another note, and I got through the gig. I got away with it, and I think I've been getting away with it for the rest of my life. But that was a great lesson, the art of bluff. But I had to start using my ears, and that was a very, very important lesson for me. Always use your ears. And for all we talk about the rules of music, I don't agree with that. For me, the only rule of music is, does it sound good? And it might sound good to one person but not good to another person. But that's the important thing. So bass became a big part of my life, and bluffing, improvising, all of these things started adding up. And I found out the bass players weren't always just playing something basic. They did things like, they played these wonderful things called riffs. Yeah, I've been playing some riffs on guitar, but they did interesting stuff as well. That was Sunshine of Your Love, Jack Bruce, Cream, a fantastic band, and bass players even soloed in rock music. It wasn't just jazz bass players who improvised. You know, rock bass, oh fantastic. Bass became very much liberated. The freedom was there. Some people would do these riffs, do solos, and sometimes chords. And I always remember a guy called Andy Fraser who played with Free, and the big hit they had, All Right Now. And I remember one bass line, let's see if I can get it right. And I always remember that, a very simple thing, but suddenly the bass was providing the harmony as well. Okay, I finished university. I was in a band. I knew by then I really wanted to play music. It was the best thing in life, and if I couldn't make that choice at that stage, I probably might get trapped in a job, or I could have been a biologist. I could probably even been a doctor of biology by now, but no, I wanted to play music. And so I had various different jobs just to keep myself going. And then one fateful day, Tony Haynes of Grand Union came to, it was the Roundhouse, and at that stage one of the things I did was I helped out my friend Paul, sound engineer, and I would be stage managing, and we were doing the Jazz Festival. Back in the day, the Jazz Festival at the Roundhouse is a fantastic event, great venue for it, and I would get to experience all these amazing jazz musicians from UK, from America, sometimes from other places, and I met Tony Haynes then, and he was looking for musicians for a show, a touring show, a music show, and so he basically asked me along for an audition, and it turned out that he wanted some people who could play more than one instrument. And the show was Strange Migration, and it incorporated musicians from other parts of the world, from Chile and Africa, and this began a wonderful education for me in learning about other cultures, other styles, what now gets called world music, which is a ridiculous title because everything is world music, but it began the next stage in my education. And Tony, he not only wanted me to play the instruments I could sort of make noises or I could play okay, you know, I was working on it, but he got me to sing. Never sung really in my whole life, well in the bath maybe, but so he made us do that, sometimes in harmony. Fantastic. I wish I'd done it from my school days. I wish I'd been in choirs, and I think that would have helped my musicality quite a lot. I would be a better musician today if I'd sung. I do sing now, not very well. I don't have time to practice it, but it is such a useful thing for me. It's the primal instrument, and as I said, I use it in my teaching, my own practice, and it helps me internalize everything. Anyway, so he got me to play other instruments as well, instruments that I can't play, not really. And one show we did, he said, I want a brass band, that sort of sound. Well, all right then, okay, I'll have a go. It did take me back to my school days when we got all those instruments out, and I had a go, you know, and you try and go. Well, that's not too bad, not too bad. All right. This instrument I probably get out once a year. I have a regular gig once a year with a brass band playing for charity. It's fun. I don't get the time to practice it. This is a cheap instrument, but actually I really love it. So, here we go. Probably the only tune I can play off by heart. I wish I had time for it, but I don't. It's a low priority. Unless someone offered to pay me loads of money to play tenor horn, then I might start practicing more. But it's good to get out every now and then. And the great thing about having a go on instruments, that you don't really play is you learn about the fingering, the techniques. So at least when I'm working with people who are playing instruments, valve instruments or whatever, the brass instruments, I can understand how the problems are that are involved in the embouchure and the harmonics and all that. It just gives me a better insight to how the instruments work. And that's how I view a lot of the instruments that I have. I don't really play them properly. I can make noises. If it's just to play one note in an ensemble, that's fine. And that's valid for me. So with Tony's brass band, I played very simple parts and really enjoyed it, of course. So my journey has carried on for a long time now. It's still going. I will never reach the destination, and if I do, I know I'm going to be mistaken. I play guitar mainly and saxophone. Those are my two sort of preferences, or those are my two not special. I'm not a specialist. I'm a specialist non-specialist, a jack of all trades, pretty crazy mixed up kid, a boy with loads of toys. I have so many instruments in this room, and I get them out every now and then, but not often enough, obviously. But it's enjoyable, and I would suggest to everyone out there, have a go at least, 2 instruments. One would be great, but to do more, to investigate other instruments, you don't need to be a virtuoso. I think a load of people start playing an instrument and think, I'm never going to be any good, why should I bother? Well, the reason why I bother is I just love it. I enjoy it. Sometimes it's painful for me, sometimes, oh gosh, if only I'd stuck with one I'd be better, but I know that's not me. I know my personality is to look at lots of different things, not just lots of instruments, but lots of styles, and that's a great thing that Grand Union has given me. Makes me inquisitive about other styles, other approaches, and I'm constantly learning from the family that is Grand Union and other people about different approaches to music. Anyway, I've done lots of talking, I've done a bit of playing, and I'm just going to finish off with something very close to my heart, an improvisation. And this is roughly based upon one of the things I've learnt with Grand Union, and that's Indian music, Indian classical music. Literally scratched the surface of that. I know a little bit about it, but I'm going to play an improvisation on a drone, a one-note drone, not a complicated chord sequence, which is what we tend to work on in jazz, chord sequences, and this is one note, one scale, and I've discovered the joy of just playing something very straightforward, and then what can I make out of it? Improvisation, composition really in a way. So this is going to be my improvisation, and I'm going to use my little soprano saxophone and a little bit of technology to give me a bit of a drone. So I hope I hope this has been interesting to you, and maybe even an inspiration to have a go on other instruments. And it's one thing about doing that is it's transferable skills. So I think about the guitar, okay, oh, saxophone, all right, okay, yeah. I even play bad piano, but it's manipulative skills, it's brain power, music is one of the best things to help you in life, mentally. It has been proven to help everything, especially when you're playing together with other musicians. Anyway, this is going to be the last thing I'm going to do. This is Rag by Rav, and here I go.